Good afternoon, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and on today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Rule 5 draft. The Rule 5 draft is an interesting topic, and it's for those of you that don't know what it is. It's basically the protection type draft or protection type service that major league teams have to put on certain eligible players that if they're not protected, meaning if they're not added to the 40-man roster and they've had enough service time after being signed to their prospective team, they can be drafted or taken by another major league team. The Mets have a few names on that list, but none of them are really familiar, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them today. The Rule 5 draft is particularly important when a team has a loaded farm system, and it's been a while for the Mets to really consider themselves in that position where they've got a loaded farm system with a lot of prospects that other teams might want to get their hands on. The Mets don't have a ton of big names on that list. There are 7 names that are available to be selected by another club. But again, none of them find themselves in Major League Baseball's top 100 minor league prospects. The two biggest names, I guess the numbers 1 and 2 on the Mets list, would be Luis Guillorme and Wilmer Bucera. And again, neither of them are huge names. Guillorme's biggest accomplishment to date was catching that errant bat that flew last spring training. He was the guy that caught it with his hand in the dugout nonchalantly. So that's Luis Guillorme's claim to fame at this point. Wilmer Bucera, for those of you that don't remember, was one of the third member of the Mets transaction with the Blue Jays, where the Mets sent R.A. Dickey and catchers Josh Tolley and Mike Nikias to Toronto in exchange for the guy who was the centerpiece at the time, Travis d'Arnaud, and the real prize, Noah Syndergaard. Bucera was the third name on that list who came over from Toronto. He also has not much to stake his claim to, again, other than being part of that trade. So the Mets don't have a ton of big-name guys they need to protect. It'll be interesting to see what the Mets do as far as protecting those two guys, if anything. To protect a player who's eligible to be selected in the Rule 5 draft, a major league team simply needs to add that person to the 40-man roster. And of course, there are ramifications and implications to that. It limits the ability to sign additional players. It really forces the team to do a better job managing its roster, and that can be tough for a team at this time of the year because you don't know who you're going to be acquiring in trade or what you're going to be doing with free agents. So it's a tricky situation and tricky scenario, and it's one that requires some delicate handling. I'll be curious to see who the Mets protect, if anyone, on their list. If you want more information about the Mets' top 7, or the 7 players that are eligible for Rule 5 selection, or if you want to learn more about the Rule 5 draft in general, I'm going to put a link in the comments section, or in the description section rather, of this video to an article that Jonathan Mayo wrote on MLB.com. It does a nice job not only summarizing who the Mets have available, but also who the other teams in baseball have available to be selected as well. So I'll put that link so that you guys can take a look and read about it. Other than that, today, and again, that deadline is today at 8:00 p.m. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on right now in baseball. It's kind of quiet. I think we're going to see a lot of talk and not a lot of action for a little while, and I think it's going to really be a big splash that's going to need to happen before there's any other movement. And that big splash, of course, is Marlins slugger Giancarlo Stanton, who, as everyone knows, is available on the trading block. Over the weekend, I'd read that the Cardinals are going to throw their names into the mix to make an attempt to acquire Stanton. There are a few teams that are looking really heavily or interestingly at Stanton. The Mets are not one of them. And again, it's really because the Mets just don't have the prospects to return to Miami. The Marlins would be foolish to deal him in division and not get an absolute king's ransom for him in part of that trade. I guess the only alternative to that would be the Mets dumping a lot of that money right back to Miami, and the Mets aren't going to do that. But the point to all of that is the Marlins do have other do have other players that they are going to make available in trade, and none of that's going to really happen until they've got a better idea of what's going to happen with Stanton. So it's very possible that the Marlins can't find a suitor for Giancarlo Stanton, or can't find the right trade, and end up doing more with their secondary level players, one of whom the Mets should have a really close look at, and that's D. Gordon. I talked about that last week. I think D. Gordon should absolutely be a priority for the Mets this year. I think they ought to do everything they can to, at the very least, explore the opportunity to trade for him. So let's keep an eye on that. I'll do that this week. It's a short week. Of course, it's Thanksgiving week. I should have one more video that I'll record before Thanksgiving, and I'll try to get that done. If I don't, though, I'll wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I will thank everyone for watching today, and always, if you're not already doing so, please follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.